Hey guys, I'm Sean. I'm one of the founders and the lead designer of Fractal Vise. We'd just like to thank everyone. You guys have been absolutely awesome. We've had so many returning backers this time, and it's just amazing to have you on the journey. And for everyone who's just joining us, welcome to the campaign. You guys have given us some great ideas during this campaign, and we're working our butts off just trying to make them. So watch this space and we'll try and make as much as we can. We're trying something a little bit different this time, so let us know what you think in the comments, and in this video we'll be getting pretty hands-on with Fractal Vise. So, in this video, this is what we'll be covering. What is Fractal Vise? Why have we made Fractal Vise? And who's it for? Throughout this video we'll also be touching on some of the add-ons. Then we'll take a look at the configurations and also the new 32 to 82 conversion kit. Then I think we'll look at one very frequently asked question. So, first of all, let's take a look at what it can do. The fractal jaw design allows secure handling of some pretty weird shaped objects. So, just to get us started, let's take a round object. Now, when you put the object inside Fractal Vise, you'll be able to see all of the jaws wrap all the way around the round shape. And what that does is that spreads the load all the way along the surface. On a traditional vise, you've got two flat planes that come together and create two pinch points. On a fractal vise, there's multiple. So it spreads the load evenly, grips firmly with not a lot of effort really, and doesn't damage your components. So let's try something a bit more irregular. Let's take this nut. So if you pop the nut inside, you can either hold it mid or just let it sit on the base there. As we rotate the lead screw, you can see the jaws slowly moving into shape and then locking in. Now you do not need to put a lot of pressure on that. A tiny pinch and that is in there. And again, you have so much contact around the outside surface of this component that you will not damage it or it won't move. So let's try something really irregular. This is one of our favorites and one that we've shown in quite a few videos. Frank the shark. So I'll point Fractal towards everyone and then insert Frank's face there. And then as I close it around him, you should be able to see it slowly crushing his head until it is firmly locked on quite a soft, pliable part, really. That is on there. You could paint that or do whatever you like with it. So let's take Frank out because he probably doesn't like that. So let's take a look at something that quite a lot of us do, and that is painting miniatures. So this has been really handy for us. We've gone through a lot of Warhammer and various D&D figurines with this project. But if you're wanting to get at this from every single angle, you can just pop the round base in there, and with the 32 version of the Fractal, you can just move it around, get your paintbrush into every single area you want, and just sit it there and let it dry. It's been so handy for us. Next up, who's Fractal Vise for? Well, it's for 3D printers, model makers, watch repairs, building tiny mechanical things, and loads more, frankly. But if you don't fit any of those categories, it's a super unnecessary phone stand. And if you don't have a phone, it's really good to fidget with. Next up, let's talk about the history of Fractal Vise. So it was first patented back in 1913 by Paulin Karl Kunz of Vienna in the good old Austro-Hungarian Empire. And it was patented as a device for obtaining intimate contact with engaging or clamping bodies of any shape. We can't really find any history of Paulin actually using it, so in 1922, the patent was either sold or leased to a business in New York called Mantle & Co. And they made them for a few years. And those are the ones that we can actually buy and restore, and you've seen on many YouTube channels. Ultimately, the advent of mass manufacture drove it into obscurity. If you'd like to find out more about Fractal Vise and the history behind it, check out our first ever update called History Repeating Itself. Everything we make here at MetMo, we always have the mantra, make it last at least 200 years. And this is no different. Especially this guy, made of full stainless steel. This will probably last over 1,000 years. So let's take a bit of a closer look at some of the components that go into Fractal Vise. So these pins quite easily slide out, and that lets you take off the entire fractal subassembly. So this is really handy if you need to maintain it, need to clean the inside, need to add any lubricants. But it's also quite handy if you want to swap out the jaws. You can easily access every single component on this with just releasing these pins. And they will just easily pop out, and you can pop on a brand new soft jaw, for example. And then when you put them back together, that's a small fractal arm. You slide that back into there, and there we go. That is fully functioning again. That's as easy as it is. Next, let's take a closer look at the fine adjuster on these. So it's quite good to use the stainless steel 82 for this, because you can see the threads actually protruding from the back of the Fractal Vise. So as we turn this, you can see how slow that carriage moves. And what that means is it gives you really fine adjustment on delicate components, which is really, really handy if you're working on like soft models or frank. It's perfect. Next up, let's look at how compact Fractal Vise actually is. So with this one, you get an 82 millimeters of clamping area. So let's directly compare that to what you can readily buy. So this has a very similar clamping area. It's got a much smaller surface area on the jaws. Well, as you can see, it's quite huge. It takes up a large space on your desk. It's big and bulky, and it's not very workable if you've got just a really small area. So what we've done with Fractal is just make it highly portable. We've crammed as many features into it as possible, while still keeping it highly functional. Let's next take a look at the configurations. And for this, I'm going to show you exactly how you change this Fractal Vise into a reverse Fractal Vise. So first off, you start with taking off the top jaws. This is done by removing 4 screws. That's all you need to do. They're quite shallow threaded, just enough to give the right amount of clamping force on the jaws so they don't deflect, and shallow enough that they're really quick to take out. So once you have these undone, just pop them to the side. You'll notice there's a series of grip screws in these holes. So what we want to do is bring in the component part that you want to clamp the inside diameter of. So this is just a simple cup that we use to paint. So let's switch out the T25 for a 2.5 Allen. And let's take out this far grip screw. So I want the jaws actually quite close together. And to store them, you can just move them along. And let's take out this one as well. And I'll move this grip screw along one. The grip screws really are just to prevent any dirt from getting through these holes and into the slide area, which will prevent it from being smooth. And I want to take these two grip screws out and move them one over, because I want to be picking up on these two holes here. So, once you've done that, we're now ready to install the reverse jaws. So typically you'd have them like that, but now we want to move them 180 degrees and pop them back to back. So I need to get my T25 again. And let's attach the reverse jaws. .180 degrees, and they go back to back. So you just want to make sure that these are just nipped up. You don't have to over tighten them. Just make sure they're nice and secure, and then they'll work perfectly. With this design, you just need to remove the Tommy bar, just so you can access the lead screw easy. So let's bring in our cup that we're wanting to clamp. You can just, if I show you it in that orientation, and slide the cup on, I can then slowly back out the fractal until it picks up on the inside of the cup. There we go. You don't need a lot of pressure. That will hold the cup perfectly. And now you can move it around, fully paint the underside of it if you want to. This works really well with some of the other add-ons that we have, like the ball joint, because that allows you to have the cup at any angle. But this is just demonstrating how easy it is to change the jaws and clamp on the internal diameter of the part. Okay, so next up, let's compare the 32 to the 82. So as you can probably see, the 82's got a bit of a tail sticking out of it. So what that means is that this can extend 82 millimeters from the clamping surfaces. So if I extend this one out, this is the 32 variation, and I'll take this right to the max of its clamping potential. So the 32 probably, it taps out around that sort of size, whereas the 82, if we just unwind this all the way, you can see, if I hold it like that, you can see the thread slowly disappearing inside. And you've really got probably 6 mil. If you really back it out, you can really stretch this out because this is such a good fit in this housing. You've got a lot of clamping potential in there. So we can take this out to 82 millimeters, which is considerably bigger than 32. So that's kind of what you're looking at with the two variants. Okay, so one thing that you guys have been asking for is the ability to be able to convert a 32 into an 82 and then swap it right back again. So what we've done is we've made the 32 to 82 conversion kit. What this consists of is all of the base components of Fractal Vise. So everything along this line here, you will get, apart from the base here, the silicon pad and the base here. And then all you have to do is take the fractal assemblies off, take your bases off, and then replace the whole midsection with this. And you simply load on your fractal assemblies and the bases, and then you have a fully functioning Fractal Vise 82. Okay, next up, let's take a look at the adapter plate. So this guy allows you to connect two Fractal Vises side by side, or have a single Fractal Vise lengthways, which then allows you to connect it to a table using these holes here. All the screws will be supplied, wood screws that go straight in here and straight into a work surface. So let's connect one of the Fractal Vises to this adapter plate to show you how it works. Okay, first of all, let's take our Fractal Vise and take the base off. All you need to do is remove these 4 screws, leave the base exactly where it is, and we'll be replacing those screws with some slightly longer screws, which just accommodate for the depth of the base plate that's already on here. We'll supply all the screws as a little kit, so if you buy an adapter plate, they will come with all of the hardware necessary to use every single function. So you can see on this is just the 3D printed component, as we've upgraded it during the campaign, but it works just the same. It was made of 6061 aluminium, which is perfectly adequate to hold devices next to each other, attach it to a table. So you want to flip it over. Let's line up the sliding base, which is this side, with the 4 holes that you require on this side. And I tend to do it upside down, so if you can see directly into the holes if you line them up. You can drop your screws right in there, and they will self-locate. When I'm doing a job like this, I tend to do the diagonals first, as it helps stabilize it a bit more. And then you get your next 2 screws in there. So next, we just tighten those guys up. I won't go too hard on this one. It is only plastic, and it's only for show. So let's do a few more on that one just to stop it. There we go. Okay, so we've now got one Fractal Vise attached to the adapter plate. When it's in this configuration, it allows you to use these countersunk holes to attach it to a table, or if you'd like, there's some fixing points down here which allow it to integrate with the table clamp, which I'll show you later. There's a lot of options you can do with this. And what it also allows you to do is take your other Fractal Vise and mount that exactly the same way next to it. So it upgrades the entire Fractal Vise. If you had 2 82s, for example, you could clamp something fairly considerable in there. And then this whole thing could be attached to the ball clamp, for example, and then you have quite a sizable clamp. So that is the adapter plate. Next up, let's take a look at the desktop ball mount. So this has been, again, upgraded during the campaign. Initially we had a side locking device, but we've just gone with a different locking mechanism, which has improved it in many ways, and I'll talk you through it. So this component and this component wrap around a steel ball, and as this closes around, you'll actually be spinning this ring once it's attached to a vise. It clamps around the ball and locks both sides and applies it's using a fine thread as well, so it applies a lot of pressure to this ball and completely locks it up. So let's get our Fractal Vise on there, and I'll show you how it works. So to load it on, you just take this component off. Let's move that to the side for a second. And then much like the adapter plate, all you do is take out these 4 screws. And again, we'll be using ever so slightly longer screws, as we have to accommodate for the base plate depth on Fractal Vise. Again, all the hardware will be supplied with everything that we sell. Okay, so once you've got those out, this one's really easy. You just leave the base plate exactly where it is, line them up. You can see directly through into the holes. You'll see the MetMo logo through the middle. Again, I like to work from the diagonals, so I'll just drop that screw in there. And let's get it started. So I won't do that all the way up, just so I can make sure that everything aligns. You can then drop in the diagonal and get that nicely aligned. And then the next two are really nice and easy to do. Again, this is a 3D printed design, works perfectly well. However, I won't overdo it with the tightening, as it will just crush the plastic. Okay, let's bring back our desktop ball mount. So when you're loading this on, all you do is bring your newly mounted Fractal Vise to the ball itself, line up the threads, and screw the ring onto it. So you can use the Fractal Vise itself to push against it, and we have these side lugs on so you can get some serious clamping force behind it, and that will help lock up this entire assembly for when you're doing heavier duty jobs like filing or drilling. So next up, I'm going to show you how to mount this onto a table. Okay, so I'm going to show you how exactly the desktop ball mount attaches to a table surface. And I've just got a simple piece of wood here, just so you can see the entire mechanism, and then I'll take it off this and we can show you it attached to the table that I'm sitting at. So all you do is pop this section around the table or worktop that you have, and then as you turn this, there's a free spinning adjuster there, so that will clamp onto the wood itself and spin freely, so that you can keep clamping down on the surface to allow you to get enough clamping pressure. There we go. So that is now fully clamped onto that piece of wood, and that's how it should clamp onto your work surface. So next up, I'll just take that off, and I'll move back. I'll pop this onto the worktop that I'm working on. And then underneath, as you saw with the piece of wood, all I'm doing is tightening that up so it's nice and secure. And that is fully locked onto that surface now. Now, all you have to do with this is undo it slightly, and then that allows the ball clamp to spin nice and smoothly and gently around. So if you have a piece in here, let's put a model, for example. I can lock that around, and then I can move that exactly to where I need, and then using the two thumb screws here, I can just lock that entire thing up, and then that is solid and I can paint away or drill or file. Okay, so if you just want a fixed location and you don't really want to use the ball, there's a handy grub screw in the front there, and all you have to do is loosen that by one turn, and then it'll unlock on that face there, and then this whole component just slides out. So then you end up with a handy table mount, nice and low profile, and is really handy if you just want to do fixed work. So now I'll show you exactly how to attach a fractal vise to the table clamp. Okay, once you have your table clamp in this configuration, we'll need to remove these two screws, which will give us access to these 4 holes underneath. And those holes will be used to attach to the base of Fractal Vise. So let's take this off. This uses exactly the same screws as the T25 torque screws as the main Fractal assemblies do. There's quite a bit more engagement on these as they are holding down quite a lot of force. Okay, so once you've got those out, there is a pin inside here which helps strengthen the entire assembly. So all you do is pull that straight up and it will pop out. So once it's in this configuration, you can bring in the fractal vise that you'd like to disassemble. And like before, you just undo the 4 base screws. Okay, once those are out, you can remove those screws and leave the base exactly where it is again. Okay, then you bring in your part assembled table clamp, line it up with the holes that are there, and again the slightly longer screws, they just line up with those, and tighten that one slightly, which will allow us to line up the rest of the screws. And you can see why I took that component off, as you wouldn't really be able to get in there otherwise. But happily, Pocket Driver is fine with this kind of application. So, once you're here, you can take your component here and push it back down onto that pin. You take your T25s and drop them back inside. Take your T25 drive bit and reattach the base plate. Now you do want to make sure these screws are nicely done up, as there is a lot of force that will be going through this backbone of the entire assembly. as there's a slight mechanical advantage as the clamping point is off to one side. So just make sure that those are nice and tight. So now you have a fully assembled table clamp with an 82 fractal attached. Next up, we have the desktop workstation. So this has a 5mm deep cutting mat and also a full brushed stainless steel surface plate, which is fairly weighty. So that helps hold the whole workstation down. We also have a metric and imperial rule, which just sits nicely there and is held in place when the two cutting mat and surface plate is installed. And it has a handy feature to just easy access for the ruler. Underneath, we have 4 silicone feet, which just help really grip to any table. So when you're working on this, it just won't move. So let's attach a Fractal Vise to this. So as usual, you want to be removing all 4 screws from a base. That's pretty standard now. We line this up with the holes there. This is a bit tricky as you're going to need to turn the entire thing upside down. When the surface plate isn't installed, it's actually quite maneuverable. You just need to make sure all of the holes are nicely lined up. And then you take those longer screws, and that just goes in nice and easy. You just put it in just enough so you can get all the others lined up. Again, let's do the diagonals, just to make it easier for ourselves. And the other two will line up perfectly. Okay, so once those are in, you now have a mounted Fractal Vise. So we can now reinstall the surface plate and the cutting mat. And then finally, the ruler. So this is perfect. You can have this at the edge of your desk, and then you can easily use the adjuster. You can have your workpiece in here. You can use this to store or cut anything. It also has storage points for any brushes or handle. We use ours for our MetMo multi-driver, but it can also be used for any other tool that you like. So next up, let's get this off and I'll show you how to attach the ball clamp. So now we're going to look at how you attach the ball clamp directly into the workstation. Now things have changed a little since we developed this, and during the campaign we've actually managed to remove this component and have the ball plugged directly into the workstation. Now this has many benefits, but most importantly it gets rid of this component and it makes it way faster to change in and out of what you're working on. So let's get this plugged on. So what you want to have is this top section of the ball clamp mount, desktop ball clamp. And you want to be plugging this stainless steel ball. There's a flat on it there. That just needs pointing towards the grub screw that's installed into here. So this can just easily just slot straight in. Line that up with that. And then all you're doing is just tightening that up so it pinches down on there and completely locks the ball joint in place. And then from there, you now have full access to the ball joint. You can undo it, use it with your workstation, tighten it up to whatever angle you want, and that's the desktop workstation with the ball mount attachment. Okay, now all the configurations are out of the way. Let's take a look at the soft drawer options. So now we're on to the FAQ section, and we've really had just one main question that's come up over and over again. So that question is, what is the difference between all the soft jaws? So in this section, I thought I'd include the flat jaws, just because we haven't really covered those yet. So these basically can go straight onto the Fractal Vise, and they just replace the entire Fractal assembly. So these will just directly replace these jaws here. And then, like we showed you earlier with the traditional table clamp, you will have these surfaces here, which are all made of brass. So they're nice soft clamps, just to clamp onto anything that's like a totally flat component. These will be great for. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into the soft fractals. So first up, brass. So brass is a traditional material for soft jaws. It's a much softer metal than steel, which means it won't scratch softer materials like aluminium, brass, copper, wood, or plastic when it's clamped. However, unlike the nylon jaws, you can put a lot more power through them. So they are comparable to steel. They are just a lot softer and won't scratch up your model or whatever you're working on. So now we're coming on to the nylon jaws. So nylon's really good for things like your soft painted models where you're only applying really gentle pressure to a workpiece. The nylon compresses slightly, so it can't deliver quite as much gripping force as the brass or stainless, but it does make it perfect for just not leaving any marks at all. And lastly, the one that we've developed throughout the campaign with you guys are the silicone jaws. Now we're just waiting on a final prototype for those, but I will put an image of them up on the screen. So silicone is a very sticky material, so it will provide a very high friction grip to anything you put in it. So it's particularly useful for anything that's highly polished and quite slippery, or delicate model work where grip and delicate touch is required. So that's where silicone really stands out. Okay guys, I think that's a wrap. Let us know what you think in the comments. It's something we've not done before, so it'd be interesting to hear what you think. Thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.